So, as part of corporate governance and objectives, we in this course must understand what corporate governance is and also discuss the importance that it has when it comes to managing corporations. We should also understand the urgency problem in depth and how it affects uh, the limited companies. So, what is corporate governance? So, corporate governance is simply a framework of rules, relationships, systems, and processes within which or by which authority or corporations controlled. So corporate governance is very important in that it helps organizations align themselves with their requirements as stipulated by accounting standards. So repeat, corporate governance by definition is simply a framework of rules, relationships, systems, and processes within and by which authorities exercise and control in corporations. So corporate governance actually defines how the rights and responsibilities are distributed among the company's stakeholders. And these stakeholders include the shareholders, the directors, the management, the employees, and also the wider community. So corporate social responsibility ensures that companies are accountable, they are transparent, they are responsible, and they align with the objectives in the best interest of all these stakeholders. So the key, or rather the core um, principles embedded in corporate governance are as follows. Number one, we have the issues of accountability, transparency, fairness, responsibility, and integrity. So these are the principles that are embedded in there. Now, when we talk about accountability per se, what are we talking about? So accountability, we're basically looking at the firm's ability to um, ensure that the board of directors and management are accountable for their actions. So here management will report to the board, whilst the board is answerable to the shareholders. The other tenet is that of transparency. So transparency basically looks at timely and accurate disclosure. So financial and operational information must be transparent. So transparent communication will actually build trust with investors and regulators. And fairness. So corporate governance systems must ensure that there's equal treatment of all shareholders, including um, the minority shareholders. And responsibilities. The directors, executives should also act responsibly by adhering to the laws, upholding the ethical standards, making decision making sustainable. Other is integrity and ethical conduct. So strong governance must promote a culture of what? Integrity, deterring fraud, corruption, and ethical behavior. So now what is the importance of corporate governance when it comes to managing corporations? So this has been the song of the moment, and we need to understand the importance. Okay, so what do you think is the importance of corporate governance when it comes to corporations? So we've defined what corporate governance is and the tenets of corporate governance. What is the importance of corporate governance?
Hello.
Hello, yes. So the importance of corporate,
Okay.
huh?
I think to ensure that managers act ethically and to fulfill the ultimate goal of maximizing the value of the firm.
Okay. Yes, so Corporate governance is important in many aspects. Number one, to enhance investor confidence. It will improve um, decision making. It will prevent corporate failures. Corporate governance will also sustain long-term projects. It will also ensure there's legal regulation. Compliance is not just an option, it's a requirement, and it will protect um, the stakeholders' stake. All right. So these are the valuable um, importances of corporate governance in managing firms. So by enhancing investor confidence, we know that investors will be more willing to commit capital to companies that will practice sound governance. So transparency and accountability, they reduce the perceived investment risks. So corporate governance also improves decision making. If you have a well-structured governance framework, it will ensure that um, decisions are made objectively with adequate and accurate checks and balances. Corporate social responsibility also prevents corporate failures and scandals. So when you have poor corporate governance, it often leads to fraud and a collapse, as seen in companies like Enron and World.com. It also promotes long-term sustainability. So when you have effective corporate governance, which aligns with corporate actions, with the environment, with the social and governance goals, it will ensure that the profit generation is balanced with social responsibility. So corporate social responsibility also is good because it ensures that there's adherence with the Companies Act. It's a legal requirement. So stock exchange rules and financial reporting standards um, there to minimize these things. So it will minimize the penalties and reputational damage. Social corporate responsibility also protects shareholders' interests. So corporate social responsibility will acknowledge that a company's success depends on their relationship that they have with their stakeholders. Okay. And finally, but not the least, it will facilitate access to the global markets. So international investors who prefer companies with strong governance frameworks. So an example we can look at is Unilever or Microsoft, which demonstrates effective governance through independent board committees and transparent reporting. So that is about the uh, part A. So what is the urgency problem and how has it um how what is the urgency problem and how are its effects limited? So this question is a prominent question that comes. What is the urgency problem and the effects, how are they limited? So what is the urgency problem? Can somebody try to explain what, in your own words, the urgency problem is?
Yeah, I was saying it's the potential conflict of interest between the principals who are the shareholders and the agents who are the managers. So the agents might want to do certain things which do not add value to the firm. I think that's what the agency problem is.
Exactly that, yeah. So it's simply a problem that arises from the separation of ownership and control. So in modern organizations, we have the owners who are the principals and the agents who are the managers. So the shareholders would want to invest their capital to expect their maximum returns. The agents, on the other hand, are professionals that are hired to run the business on behalf of the shareholders. So the problem arises when the managers want to pursue their own interests, and this may not align with those of the shareholders. So the nature of this problem is that our day-to-day managers of operations, they will have more information than the shareholder. So sometimes they'll create what we call information asymmetry, where, for instance, a manager might engage in activities that will increase their personal benefits, like bonuses, prestige, and security rather than maximizing the shareholders' what? Wealth. So examples of conflicts that may exist would be instances where managers award themselves excessive salaries, they undertake risky projects that will boost short-term results, you avoid the profitable but risky ventures just to protect their positions, you're manipulating the earnings just to appear that they are successful. Now, what are the consequences of this urgency problem? So number one, there will be reduced shareholder value. So meaning the misaligned decisions may reduce the profitability and the firm's value. Number two, there will be inefficient resource allocation. So funds might be invested in non-productive projects. Number three, there will be increased what? Costs. So legal and monitoring costs will raise due to governance failures. Number four, there will be loss of investor confidence. So poor transparency will discourage the potential investors. Number five, there would be corporate failure. So extreme cases can lead to fraud, collapse, or takeover. Now, what are some of the methods that can be used to reduce or to limit these urgency problems? That's what we want to talk about. So the causes, we've talked about them, and ways to limit them could come in these ways. Number one, performance-based compensation. So through performance-based compensation, you're going to link managerial pay to the company's performance if it aligns the interest. So you give them bonuses, you give them stock options and performance shares. So you to encourage managers to work towards what? Increasing the shareholder value. Secondly, you're going to have a board oversight and corporate governance. So here you have an independent and active board that will monitor and challenge some of the decisions. These committees like audit, risk, and remuneration committees to enhance accountability. Then transparency and disclosure. So there should be regular and accurate reporting through the audited financial statements that will reduce information asymmetry. So the disclosure of directors' remuneration should be stated, and any related party transactions should be done so. Then also shareholder activism, where institutional investors and large shareholders can use their voting rights to influence the corporate strategy and monitor management actions. Then takeover threat. So if managers perform poorly, the company can become what? A target of acquisition. So you tell them to say, if we do not perform this, we're going to be taken over. So managers intend to improve their performance. The other is regulatory oversight. So managers and stock exchanges, like SEC, Lusaka Stock Exchange, will enforce rules on disclosure, insider trading, and also regulatory governance standards. So that will help. And finally, but not the least, corporate culture. So you promote ethical leadership and corporate values that will reduce what? Self-serving managerial behavior. Okay. So this is what we can say about the urgency problem. So question part B, suggest reasons why directors might want to go to take a private company. So these reasons why directors might want to take a private companies. But B, suggest ways why a private company would go public. But C, discuss why the net asset valuation method is likely to be a good way of valuing a company for IPO, initial public offer shares, and compare the market for funds available to smaller businesses with that of multinational companies, and comment whether the market offers satisfactory service to a company still building its track record. All right, so that question answer any part. Let's look at part A. Why directors will want to take a private company. Why do you think directors would want to take on a private company? Anyone?
I guess it's due to reduce the regulatory burdens.
Hmm.
Yeah, increased operational secrecy and flexibility.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure
So
there are many more.
very good thinking lines. Yes. Sometimes being a public company is tiresome. So a company would want to, in lack of a better term, downgrade from public to a private company. And some of the reasons are as follows, like you have mentioned. Number one, it could be to um number one, it could be to avoid market pressure. So you have freedom from having to publicly do your public accounts because according to the requirements, all public companies must publish their accounts. So you want to reduce that market pressure. Number two, you want to reduce on compliance costs because public companies have a lot of legal reporting costs, sake filings and audits. Number three, you want to have greater control so management can make strategic changes without interfering, being having interference from shareholders like we have done there. Confidentiality, sometimes sensitive information, you want it to remain private, but that is not the same with public companies. Number five, restructuring or turnaround. It's easier to organize without worrying about the stock fluctuations or prices. Number six, prevent hostile takeovers. So taking over a public company is easy. Private is in private hands. So an example of Dell Technologies was taken private in 2013 by Michael Bell to restructure and focus on the internal solutions. All right. So that is one reason why a company may decide to go in reverse. Is that clear? Are we together? Is that clear? All right, it's clear. So we now go to why company would want to go public on the other hand. Why would the company want to go public? So there are many reasons. Number one, to access larger capital. So IPOs raise funds for expansion. So you can only get that when you go public. Enhance corporate image. So being listed increases prestige and credibility with customers and suppliers. Number three, limited liquidity for. Am I clear or I'm breaking? Am I
You were
clear?
breaking, but
On my part, it's breaking.
Okay. How
I don't
about
know if it's my network from this side.
okay? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So what did we say why a company would want to go public? You have access to large capital, you have enhanced corporate image, you have enough liquidity for shareholders so to allow early shareholders and founders to sell their shares. Okay. There's employee motivation, so the stock options that will attract employees to be part of the owners. So some companies will go that way. There's lower cost of capital, so public companies can access cheaper equity financing compared to bank loans. All right, so those are some of the reasons. So compare a business market, compare the market for funds available to smaller businesses of multinational companies, and comment on the market offers satisfactory service to the company, still building a track record. Okay, so part three, we went at part three. Part three is discuss why the net asset valuation method is likely to be a good way of valuing a company for initial public offering. Okay, part B, why is the net present asset value method suitable for IPOs? Okay, so The following is how you could answer this. So to start with, the net asset value method is a method that values a company by calculating the total assets and subtracting the liabilities. So it reflects the book value and the market value. So reasons why the net asset value is suitable for IPOs. Number one, it ignores the future earning potential. So investors here will buy shares for expected future profit and not for past values. Number two, it also understates intangible assets. So it fails to value goodwill. It fails to value the brand reputation or intellectual property. That's another reason why it's unsuitable for IPO. All right. So we're looking at the reasons why the net asset value method is not suitable for the initial um, asset value. Okay. Why is this method not suitable? Oh, this method is a traditional approach. It is used to evaluate what? The value of the company based on the balance sheet position. So we calculate it by subtracting the total assets minus the liabilities. So it actually gives the company its book value, and it represents what shareholders theoretically receive if all assets were sold. Now, this method basically works well for asset-heavy businesses like real estate, manufacturing companies, but where intangible assets dominate, it is not suitable, especially when dealing with an IPO. So investors primarily are interested in the future profits. So the concept we need to understand here is that NAV focuses on historical value accounting, okay? Whereas IPO investors base decisions on companies' growth, earning potential, as well as the market sentiment. So if you are relying on NAV, it will give you a distorted and often undervalued picture of the worth of the company. So questions are, why should NAV be unsuitable for IPOs? Number one, it ignores the future earning potential, because in an IPO, investors will primarily be expectant of the future profits, not what the company currently owns. So NAV will reflect only past performance and the static balance sheet rather than the future cash outflows. Number two, NAV will understate intangible assets, because in modern corporations, they derive such value from intangible assets like the brand reputation, the goodwill, the patents, and customer relations. So this intangible aspect does not appear in the balance sheet. So NAV will ignore that. Thirdly, depreciation and historical cost. NAV only relies on historical accounting, whereas assets are recorded at their purchase cost, less accumulated depreciation. So this approach will ignore the current conditions and appreciations of assets over time. And it's not suitable across industries, because NAV favors capital-intensive industries like mining, real estate, manufacturing, whereas the assets are valued high. It also undervalues the capital light industries like the technology, the consulting, media, whereas intellectual property, IP, innovation are the modern sources of value. So it has become difficult to compare companies across sectors. So finally, but not the least, NAV ignores market conditions. Okay? NAV ignores the market conditions and overlooks the market dynamics like the demand supply forces, the investor perception, and the prevailing market trends. So IPO here depends significantly on the appetite and economic outlook. So this is how we could answer that. Then compare the funds available to a small business with uh, that of a multinational company, and compare whether the market offers are satisfactory to the company until building its track record. Okay. Question number 4. Any want to try that one? Okay. So when you're comparing funds for SMEs and multinationals, you look at it from a number of aspects. We look at it from the aspect of access to markets, financial instruments, investor confidence, as well as what? The regulatory requirement and the swap options. So here are some of the things to look out for. Okay. So we're comparing SMEs to multinational companies. So we should know that access to finance is very important for growth of a company. Also availability, the cost, and also how sophisticated the funding options. All these vary depending on the size and the structure. So small businesses who often operate locally with limited resources and track record, whereas multinationals who operate across multiple countries and have um, established reputations that will enable them access the global market. So we're comparing these two, we want to see the aspects. So SMEs, in terms of access to markets, they have limited and mostly they can only access local banks and microfinancial institutions, whereas the multinational, they are wide access and can issue equity and bonds in international companies. So here SMEs, as you can see, lack the size, the creditworthiness, and the reputation to attract institutional investors, whilst multinational companies can raise large sums from stock exchanges. Number two, the cost of capital. So high it's for SMEs, it is high due to the perceived risk and lack of collateral, whereas the cost of capital for multinational is low due to strong credit ratings. So banks will often do what? Will often um and investors often charge high interest to compensate for the risk of SMEs, whereas multinationals benefit from the global trust. The financial instruments that are used for so SMEs will use the bank instrument and loans and overdrafts, whereas multinational companies will use advanced instruments like bonds, equity, and derivatives. So the multinational companies can diversify funding sources and can use complex instruments, hedging risks, and also leveraging on financial markets. And in terms of investor confidence, for SMEs, it is low, it is limited, uh, operating history. And in terms of size, it is small. They like audited financials, whereas multinationals have a strong track record that is audited statements and global brand recognition. So confidence affects the willingness to invest in any organization in terms of financing, investor trust, and multinational companies. So regulatory requirements are as follows. For SMEs, it's less complex. For multinationals, it's complex. Comes to currency swaps, the most used for SMEs is a domestic currency and they're limited to foreign exchange options, whereas the multinationals, they are reliant on the multi-currency options, the hedging options, the cross-border financing. So in a nutshell, multinational companies can raise funds in US dollars, in euros, and other currencies to diversify their funding and reduce their exposure. All right, so this is where we end. Is there any questions?